We are now officially being recorded. Hi, Facebook land. We're here today with all of these amazing agents. And since most agents show up 10 minutes late, there'll be more later. But we're going to go ahead and share our screen and take our faces off. That video. All right, so today's conversation is really going to be based on the contract. Does everybody have a copy of the contract in a Binzer?
Yes.
Do you have a highlighter? If not, please feel free to pass down the highlighters. Please leave the highlighters at the end of today's class so we can use them again in the future. And no, I won't be sanitizing them. So if you'd like to bring your own sanitizer in the future, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, it's a lot of disclosures today. Disclose, disclose, disclose. Please do not place them in your mouth. Now, if you do place it in your mouth by mistake, you can take it with you. That is one way to say, I'm keeping it. We've all been there where it's like, it's Monday morning and you're like thinking, you're like, all right, that wasn't my pen. It is now. All right, so let's just go down the road. Oh, sorry, did I kick you? No, I kicked your backpack and I didn't kick it hard. Don't worry about it. It's just fine. Lucinda, we'll start with you and we'll go this way today. So just say your name and go down the field so everybody knows who everybody is.
Lucinda.
Kathy Van Fettenberg.
Dave Poquet. Scott Simon.
Michael Stream.
Jason Howell.
Mandy Neat, that was exciting. And John Schrader is the one that's sitting at the end that he disappeared on us for a second. He is the loan officer, if you haven't met him yet, with Epic Lending. And if you have any questions about lending, you should really get together with John and have it broken down, because the importance of moving forward with about what we're about to talk about, you're going to see some oopsies happen. We're going to see a lot of oopsies happen. And in those oopsies, it's called monies in lieu of repairs being sent to the lender. And can anybody tell me how a lender feels about repairs?
Not good.
What does it usually equal?
Change.
Less of a loan and less chance of getting it home.
Something's wrong with it.
Yeah, loan denial for sure. Because now they're going to want that whole list of items, proof of repair by contractors, pictures. They're going to give it to the appraiser. It's just going to be a nightmare. I just want you to know it is not mortgage fraud to use a tool of a contract to negotiate repairs. However, the buyer's inspection notice, which is the biggest change that we've seen in a long time, and honestly, they're just trying to make it so we don't have unenforceable requests and responses. They just made some changes to make it so we can't say, oh, that was unenforceable or that was invalid. And then you just lost the whole inspection period, or the understanding of that seller's response was amiss. And the agents played a game instead of just being more transparent. What we're going to see is that people think that this tool is a contractual item. The buyer's inspection notice at no point is a contractual item. Per how we do business in Arizona, the only things an escrow company needs are the contractual items, which is not the tools. So a tool is incorporated in as a negotiating item, but it is not incorporated in as a change of the contract. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So when we deal with monies, what do you think that should be on?
Addendum,
Why?
because it's not enforceable unless it's on an addendum.
Because everybody has to see
Or-
the addendum, right?
Everybody, yeah.
The addendum is what changes the contract terms.
Right.
While you're still negotiating a meeting of the minds, should you ever pull out an addendum? When you're in negotiation for the meeting of the minds initially? Why?
Because it's not agreed upon yet.
Exactly. So people go, oh, just sign it and send an addendum over. Does either party have to sign that addendum? No, but whatever's already signed and executed and delivered are contractual obligations. So if someone's ever buttering you up real good and like, "Oh, why more paperwork?" I'll tell you why. It's called protection. Just think to yourself, do I want an executed contract with these terms? Because if the answer is no, an addendum means nothing, because no one's obligated to the agreement. We might have this today, but how many of you have ever slept on buying something and the next day like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't buy that yesterday? That's why timeshares have how long of a rescission period?
30 seconds.
I think it's like 10 days, actually, that you can cancel a timeshare, right? Because the coercion they claim that they put us into, which is true. Have you ever walked into like a car dealer or timeshare presentation and you're like, I'm not buying today, I'm just going to, you know, peruse and get my free gift they promised me in the mail, because that's both car dealers and timeshare people. And you go in and you're all pumped and you leave like something dark side, something buy now. You know, like Houston, there's an issue. So we want to make sure we know that's part of the counter, because once we have the addendum, that means we're actually under contract with terms and no one has the right to change their minds. And unless you can prove coercion, which is going to be really hard in our world, there's no time of rescission, right? We have an inspection timeline, but that's different than a time of rescission. So it's really important to remember these things when we're moving forward with the changes. So why did I give you a highlighter? Because you're right, Lucinda, it's really easy to have the red line contract, in which I have to the left of you. But it's really hard as the Realtor to find what's changed. So the first form that we're going to work on, I really think we should work on the changes to the buyer's inspection notice. Now for you, Jason, you're gonna be like, what changes? Like, this is fantastic. This is what I'm starting with. But truly, there have been some changes to it. So does anybody want to tell me the first section which was added or changed to the buyer's inspection notice?
The one right above the bar. Buyer and seller acknowledges and agrees upon corrections, repairs.
Yeah, absolutely. That first section there, that says buyer and seller acknowledge that any agreed upon corrections / repairs, and then they have A and B. Okay, so A must be performed in a workmanlike manner has always been part of our purchase contract, correct? Right, but it's true that that was only for an aggregated total of under $1,000. So a homeowner can't just be like, I'm gonna fix the water heater, you know, and the water heater's $1,200. No, that's considered major in nature. And it's over 1,000, therefore you have to hire a contractor. Any of you ever been handyman or handy women? I have fixed plenty of ceiling fans, yeah, and things. I consider myself a handy woman when I feel like I'm impatient for the guy I married. And I have something called a rule in my life. My whole life has been a fix-it fairy, right? Like, it's amazing how that toilet in that house is just running fine now. I have no idea who fixed it. These are all bad things. But the concept is I can't, without a contractor's license, do anything in the total of $1,000. How much chlorine do you think that buys your pool these days? Not very much. $1,000 really needs to be updated by the Register of Contractors, but it's not. So we might as well just figure every single repair moving forward, unless it's just like a really basic cosmetic repair, is probably going to need a licensed contractor. And it's the seller's responsibility to give receipts showing proof of repairs. So this is a really good place to stop our buyers and sellers and say, hey, wait up. We need to talk about this. Because a lot of agents never understood that the Register of Contractors has something to do with our contracts. And they were not advising their clients properly, right? Lead the horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. But the problem is we weren't even leading the horses to the water. So now there's no way of you not telling somebody you're going to have to hire a licensed contractor. Now, my husband, who's a painter at trade, and he's a handyman of all, I will tell you, jack of all trades, master of, I will absolutely say none. I'll never forget him thinking, let's see if the toothpaste trick works from YouTube, and let's put toothpaste in the hole in the drywall and see if it really hardens that I can. And I'm like, don't put toothpaste in my wall. Right? He's the guy that argues saying that a license is just as good as someone taking a test, and this is crap, and this is just a reason to charge more. Not our bag, not our discussion. I just go, whatever, babe, you're just upset you can't charge that. And so the concept is, guys, you might run into that discussion. This is the law. And so until the law changes, what does aggregated mean though?
In total?
No, it's totally in total, right? So if there's 5 repairs and they all seem really minor, but when you add them up, it's over $1,000. It says the aggregate contract price, including labor and materials, is 1,000 or greater. So you have 2 GFCI issues, you have a plumbing leak under the kitchen sink, and you have 3 running toilets.
Yeah, easy, 1,000, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's what that, we used to like be like $500. Now it's definitely $1,000, right? So we have to be aware of these items. Okay, so anybody have any questions on that section there? Okay, next changes. Where are the next changes? I'll give you a hint. It's still on page 1 somewhere. Yeah, that is definitely one of the changes. And there's one other one in that same line, Wendy. Because I know you have this as memorized as I do.
Yeah,
Yes.
some about address, yeah.
Yeah, it's the words or address. That's what was added. So on that bottom checkbox, it says buyer elects to provide the seller the opportunity to correct or address, which is completely different than what we've been taught.
Mhm.
Except if you're new, you're gonna be like, this is great. It's always great to start with new forms because you're already gonna seem smarter than legacy agents, so to speak, because you're gonna be like, well, this is the only way I've ever done it. When we have to retrain ourselves, that's usually the hardest part because it's so fast to say something like, that's invalid. I want you all to realize moving forward, you're gonna have a lot of pushback of people being like, that's an invalid response. No, you guys, did you read it? I used the October 2022 buyer's inspection notice. That was not invalid as long as I used the October 2022 residential purchase contract. Right? So it's all based on what purchase contract you're using. So make sure we're using the correct one. But it said buyer elects the seller an opportunity to correct or address the items disapproved, the disapproved items listed below. Attach an addendum if applicable. Wendy, why do you think we had to add that language in risk management?
So I would say because of the monetary ask that they're asking the seller to pay it, so they're not putting it in the vendor.
Absolutely, because did a lot of people turn in the Binzer to escrow like, hey, they agreed to $5,000? And then what does escrow have to do with that Binzer?
And they will put that money.
Yeah, Mike and Wendy are both like, loan denial. What's different here is that when we say address, now we can accept monetary replies. We're gonna talk about some best practices right now. I don't want you to stop specifying what your client wants corrected. If they want a water heater corrected, to replace water heater or repair water heater, right? If whatever they want, you should still be addressing it like we should have been all along. And then you should still be saying, or $5,000 in lieu of above repairs. Or here's what they don't like, and they expect, in lieu of repairs, they would like $5,000 credit. And then the seller can respond as appropriate to that question. What's different there is we never were able to specify that we want $5,000. I don't want you to fix it. Like, I don't trust you to fix it. Like, I see everything you think you fixed already. Please stop it. You've all been in those houses. You're like, oh, so you do watch a lot of home improvement. Or there is the Red Green show. If you guys used to have the flip TVs, and Red Green, what he would do is he would buy duct tape, and it was my dad's favorite show to watch. And anytime something was broken, the challenge was, how much duct tape does it take to fix the broken item? And so that's the whole show, is about duct taping things. These are things we don't want to see our clients feel like they have to ask for the repair, right? Because they don't trust that they're going to do more than duct tape it. Now, I'd say no, I use blue tape because when you take the tape off, I want it to all fall apart nicely. But this is something we're going to be able to shift on how we're asking. So items disapproved should never be a question, though. You should always be specifying what items they disapprove of. And it should not say C 10.6, 11.7 and list out line numbers of the home inspection without the explanation of what those are. Because ambiguity is an issue, right? So then we're gonna go all the way down to the bottom of page 2. And under buyer acknowledges that broker, I'm not gonna make you find it, but there is some added language. It says buyer further acknowledges, and it's halfway through the paragraph. It says 1, then 2, and then there's a period, and it says buyer further acknowledges that if seller agrees to address the items disapproved by monetary credit or change in purchase price, an addendum must be submitted to buyer's lender, who may limit or restrict total contractual credits. That was added. Why do you think we had to add that?
To scare the sellers, that they might lose their deal. They don't, I don't know.
Or scare the buyers?
The buyer. Yeah.
It really,
Seller.
it's to have the buyer acknowledge the fact that if we're already getting money in the purchase contract from the seller to buy down the rate, say we negotiated 3% in the contract. And here we find out we need a new AC, we need a new roof, we need all these issues. This house is falling apart, right? And we ask for maybe what would equal $12,000, $15,000, and they agree to it because that deferred maintenance of just sustaining a livable home, right, is there. And I'm over a 6% credit from the seller. The lender will not allow the buyer to receive, first of all, anything in cash, right? And secondly, they say there is a 6% concession limit to the loan. So any other monies just sits, it goes away. So you have to think about this, right? Or on conventional deals, sometimes it limits it to less than 6. FHA and VA, it's always 6%. And those are owner occupied. Typically a conventional deal, if it's for an owner occupying primary residence, it will be a 6% limit, but sometimes you see a 5% limit or a 4% limit. So we have to know these contribution limitations, or you're gonna have a really bad buyer saying, where's my money? And you know where it is? It's on the table back in the seller's net. Do you want that mad buyer? So this is another talking point that really good realtors like yourself have always told their clients, hang on, before we negotiate more money, let's definitely talk about the limitations of how much you can receive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so conventional deals are limited to 6% concession.
Typically it's 6%. Sometimes it's less on conventional. FHA and VA are always limited to 6. It's never more than 6.
Okay.
I've never seen more than 6. A few things to think about. If that roof has to get replaced and that buyer has already found a roofing company, we can do an invoice made out to the seller, and the seller can pay at close of escrow a roofing company on behalf of the buyer. But please know what we have to be telling that buyer is you're responsible to make sure it actually gets done. Like, this is at your own risk, because if that roofing company goes out of business tomorrow and they took your money today, you're out. So you have to be confident, and that's outside of me on that confidence level.
We did that. I don't know if you remember that.
I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
Did it work out for
Yeah,
your
so it
people?
really worked out. They were so happy.
Yeah, so when you start hitting those numbers and you're going over, okay, what can be paid to the contractor directly? What can be paid to the company? But that's not on us to figure out. That's up to the buyer to figure out, who am I working with and who am I comfortable with? What that reminds me of is, have you guys ever been down like Bell Road and 75th Avenue area? And there, if you're headed from this side of town down Bell Road to the Arrowhead Mall, which is 75th Avenue. Right before that, there's been this building that's changed many times, and it's always some kind of car dealer. And it's changed like at least 15 times in my span of living in Arizona. And I'll never forget going to it when Jake decided, when I was pregnant with Ashley, that we were going to buy a truck. He's like, we're going to buy a truck. And he was dead set on a certain kind of truck. And then we went to this place, and the guy talked him into a different truck. And I was an ornery pregnant lady. And I said, this is not what you told me you were buying. And so I think we need to sleep on it. And the guy said, and this is something I watch for when I talk to contractors and things. The guy said, well, if you give me $500 today, I'll hold the price I quoted you today, and we'll hold the truck for at least 36 hours for you. And I looked at Jake, and I was just in a bad mood. Well, yeah, that's what happens. I'm a ginger. I snapped. And I said, no, We're not giving him any money. I need the money. We're gonna have to buy diapers. And just like, I guess if it's here, it was meant to be. And he moped and we left. Next day, totally out of business, cleared lot.
Whoa.
So if we gave that guy $500, it'd be
No.
gone.
Gone.
Same thing with contractors though, right? They're here for a minute, they could be gone tomorrow. So I always tell that story when I talk to my buyers that are going to risk that. So you need to look into this because I'm not you. And if that seller pays that contractor on your behalf directly, we have no recourse and I'm out at closing. So are you willing to take a chance? Usually, my clients, and same with yours on that one, they find out the reputation of the contractor. They go back many years. They can go through and look at the corporation, how long it's been in, how many owners, who owns it. Like there's a lot of digging they can do, but I'm not going to do it for them. That's up for them to do for themselves. Hey, Justin, what's up, man? You need a contract and a bins there. If someone could pass one down, that'd be lovely. And there should be highlighters at the end of the table if you would like to utilize them. So these are things to think about because when we're limiting the contractual credits, when there's a limitation and we go over that limitation, and it can happen, especially in this market, we are going to have an issue with these buyers that you got a great deal with, but all they see is you left $500 on the table. You know what I could have done with that $500? Well, I know what I did. I kept it, but you know, yeah. Oh my gosh. I am so glad I had babies 20 years ago or 10, 17 years ago. All right. So now we're going to go down to page 3. On the top of page 3 in bold, what was changed, it says opportunity to correct or address. So now or address was taken care of here, in there too. And so it says or address 4 times throughout this. And at the very end, it says attach an addendum if applicable. Now, I think I misspoke. Will you forgive me if it's a Monday and I made a mistake? So I want to go backwards for a second. Give me 1 second. This is what I'm having a hard time with. I'm still in debate. I'm still in debate on how we change this contract. And I'm really waiting for Nikki to release a video for you. If we can demand that they give us money in lieu of the repairs. So I want you to stick to or. But I want you to be extremely specific right now until we have more clarity from the legal hotline on, because when we get to the contract changes, you're going to see why I'm in debate. On if we can demand, I want $5,000 or we're going to cancel, right? Because that was one of their intentions with or address was buyers were asking for money. But my issue is I internally keep thinking we have the right to ask for corrections and state we would rather have money in lieu, but the seller's the one that truly has the right to address it monetarily, which has always truly been the case. But that wasn't their whole intent in risk management. So if you can do best practices to tell your client, it's not about a renegotiation of sales price or concessions, but we have to say what we disapprove of and then say, or sales price reduction or in lieu of reduction, right? And if they come back, saying that they're going to fix everything, then we're still kind of stuck. And that's the difference that I'm having a hard time with. And between today and tomorrow, I will get more clarity on it because we're going to rediscuss this, not in the detail we are right now at the office meeting tomorrow. But I really, truly think best practice is to look at a buyer and say, do you love this home? What would make it so you didn't want to buy this home? Are you comfortable at this price? Are you good here? And know that you're not there to renegotiate a contract, but to get items fixed that they couldn't live without them being fixed, right? Or they're uncomfortable living in the home without them being fixed, just like we always have. But the seller is allowed to finally respond here that they're going to address them as follows. And they can just say money if they want, and they can say seller will credit buyer $5,000 in lieu of repairs. See addendum 1. And then addendum 1 should be attached. And then the buyer and the seller can sign addendum 1. Now, as a buyer's agent in this situation, I would like to be very clear that I already have addendum 1. If I ask for $5,000 attached to my buyer's inspection notice and seller's response, because if you agree to addendum 1, we are very happy, and I like to get the ball moving. I don't like to depend on the other agent to create things ever. If I want it now, and I'm gonna have it done with it now. I'm not gonna wait for us to have discussions, because all that does is drags out my timelines, and what are there? Drop dead timelines consistently. So we want to make sure that if your client's intention is, I'd rather have $5,000 instead of the repairs, send addendum 1 with it. Signed, ready to go. Pick your lane. I don't get many things, so it's all good. Tell your phone, it's all good.
So Mandy, if I'm correct, there's multiple different options here, but we could ask for repairs, right?
Mhm.
We could ask for, money at closing,
You're gonna say, or if you're the buyer. Mhm.
or we can ask for a reduction of the sales price. Those are different things, right?
Or
Okay.
you can even, I mean, in lieu of repairs, you can really ask for any kind of concession, prepay my HOA fees for a year. You know, because what if we already hit, I'll be right with you, Justin, I saw your brain working. What if we already hit our limitation? And we wanted something else, but again, we're gonna say the items on page 1 that we disapprove of,
Okay.
and then say, or.
That was my question with the limit of the 6% of concession. If you just ask them to reduce the sales price, does that still go to that 6% of the
No.
concession? That's totally separate. So you could ask them to do that plus some money at closing, right?
Yes.
Because they're two separate things. Okay.
And then you would create an a what?
An addendum.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you. But yes, that is totally different, and yes, you can.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to see if we could get John involved here, is because he's a lender, because when you do some of this stuff and you ask for repairs or money in lieu of repairs, depending on loan type, it changes everything.
Well, and that's exactly what,
Have you guys already talked about that?
well, that's why we have or addressed, right? So something that you weren't here to talk about was our changes on page 1 of the Binzer is that we need to make sure that we're attaching an addendum and addressing the addendum. See addendum 1. So if we ask for a price reduction, we ask for a concession, then we should already have addendum 1 changed with the sales price to be the new sales price and seller to credit buyer blank amount. It should never say on the addendum in lieu of repairs. On here, it should say see addendum 1 or addendum 2 or addendum 5. I don't care what addendum number it is. If you guys have issues and have lots of addendums, because not you have issues, your clients, the parties have issues and they keep changing things. I'll be right with you. So we want to make sure that John only gets the addendum. Now, if it's a cash transaction and everybody agrees to it, escrow will go off this all day long. But that's if there's absolutely no lender that's ever going to be involved. And go ahead, John, how does this work in your world?
Well, my question was, is the Binzer in that scenario you just described referring to the addendum? Does the addendum refer to the Binzer?
No,
So let's make sure that doesn't happen, because if the Binzer becomes part of the contract, then we've got to.
and that's why I said you never write in lieu of repairs. You always address the addendum on the buyer's inspection notice, but never the opposite.
And just say, see addendum 1.
Yep.
Or addendum, whatever.
And you know what cracks me up, Justin? I love that you brought that up. You didn't really bring that up, but you kind of got me down this trail. Is I had an agent call the other day and she said, well, I'm going to create an addendum to the Binzer and I'm going to call it addendum A. And that way it's not really part of the contract.
Yeah.
And I said, I love you, but no matter what you label an addendum, it's all part of the contract. So if the concept is we're going to redo the buyer's inspection notice, let's redo the buyer's inspection notice. If the seller's going to redo their response, it's not going to reset the timelines. But just so the buyer and seller can come to terms, let's redo that part so the buyer and seller can come to terms. But we never do an addendum to the buyer's inspection notice. We do an addendum only if we have contractual changes, which is sales price, credits, prepayments, things of that nature. But never, ever use an addendum form to change a term or a repair, because an addendum does go with a contract. And it is considered mortgage fraud to not give the escrow company and the lender all copies of contractual documents. Does that make sense?
Which includes that.
Yes, because an addendum is part of a contract. We good? I was just waiting. You good? And am I right on my limitations? VA and FHA 6%, most conventional Owner,
Seller concession?
mhm,
Okay.
primary residence is
They say
6%.
6%, conventional depends on LTV. So if your LTV is at 90 or above, it's 3%. If it's 90 to 75, it's 6%, and if it's less than 75, 9%.
And loan to value means, the amount of the loan depends. Yeah. That's LTV. So say that again, John. The concession limitation, 90% or above was 3% from the seller or other gifted funds.
90 to 75 is
6%.
And below 75, LTV is 9%.
I've never seen anybody give 9% though.
Me either.
it could
FHA,
happen.
6%.
VA,
VA,
6%.
6%. Investment properties, 2%.
That's the one. In the investment properties, when your clients are buying investment properties, knowing that, when they're asking for that 2% concession that they need to buy down that rate, that's a pretty big deal to know that we're not asking for money then on repairs. Then you are going directly to sales price reduction. And when you go to sales price reduction, you just reduce the concession as well. Because the concession was 2% of the sales price. So if we go from 500,000 to 450, right? Well, that 2% just reduced from 10,000 to 9,000. So these are things we have to be, so Justin's like right on the money. When we change terms of the contract, as soon as you have those term changes, you have to get it to the lender right away. You cannot sit on that when everyone signed it because they also have timelines here. Let's think about it. You have 10 days to do your buyer's inspection notice, right? Truly, the buyer should take all 10 days. There's a lot of things I could be doing here. And then the seller has 5 days to respond. Let's say the seller takes all 5 days to respond. We're at day 15. And then the buyer has 5 days to think about their response. If they don't respond back with just yes, right? That's 20 days. Say we have a 30-day closing. Our closing disclosure is due 6 days prior to close of escrow because the closing disclosure from the lender, which breaks down the money that they have to know these items on, has to be signed off on in enough time for the federal government through TRID to say, cool, you reviewed your docs. You're good to go sign your closing paperwork. And then per our contract, the closing paperwork is supposed to be signed 3 days prior to close of escrow. In a perfect world, please start carrying people if they're not perfect. And then we're 3 days to closing, right? So like our timeline is so important so we don't mess up lending. Because when we give them any kind of monetary change, that changes the whole numbers game of redisclosure for them. So we have to remember all the moving parts. We good so far? All right, so we have our 5 days. Now, if our seller decides to be weird, pretend you represent the seller and the seller's like, I'm going to go inspect for myself with my own company what the buyer is claiming in the buyer's request. The buyer claims that there's mold in the bathroom. I don't believe them. So I'm going to go inspect it. I'm going to hire my own company. And that company comes back. Guess what the seller has to do?
Disclose it.
And what does that reopen?
Your tender period timeline,
You-
or
well,
your inspection timeline.
your cancellation timeline. Because
Or your cancel, well, okay, yeah, your cancellation timeline.
I like where you're going. And how many days do you have as a buyer's agent once you receive this new inspection information if your buyer's not good with the information?
5 days.
5 days. Yeah, so when there's a change to the disclosures, which that'd be a change to the disclosures, dumb seller, just go get it remedied. They just reopen the cancellation period. And that's so important to know. And it is the seller's obligation to disclose any kind of inspections that they have, any information they have at any point in time during the contractual process, right? And in the mold world, you'd be amazed in Maricopa County how small it really is that they all kind of know each other. So when someone goes, oh, I'm just gonna keep that to myself, they'll never find out. Oh no, they will find out. So these are like really good things to know here. So during this 5 days, when they're deciding what they want to do, it's one thing to get an estimate of work. It's another thing to inspect for yourself. Because when you hire an inspection to be done, it must be disclosed. So that's really important. The buyer's election then just comes down to buyer elects to cancel the contract. We can't come to terms, hit it in that 5 days. I don't care if you're an hour before, it's 11 PM on day 5. Guess who's staying up until their 5 days is totally done right? You guys. That's why we're hired, right? We don't get to sleep. Because I'm like, they're like, I'll call you back. And I'm like drinking the coffee. I'm staying by them. I can't sleep because at midnight, it's over. It's over. Even if it's 11:30 PM, as long as I have that receipt showing I canceled before midnight, it's valid, right? But if I cancel at 12:01 AM, who am I risking? I'm risking the buyer's earnest money. So we have to be like, I'm noticing agents are just trusting each other, which I don't want you to say that there's no trust in the world. There is trust. But we need to remember who we advocate for. And we have to remember that even though we want to play offense, sometimes we have to play defense. Because if we can't come to terms and they're like, well, we'll just give you an extra day and nothing's in writing, meaning an addendum signed by the parties, not an email between agents. Well, I'm going to cancel. And if we can come to terms the next morning, I can rescind that cancellation as the buyer's agent with the buyer's permission and move forward with their new response. As long as it's done promptly. So I want you to be so cautious of these timelines. Does that make sense? Never trust the other handshake. Because what happens is you come in my office and you want me to help you solve it. And I want to help you solve it. So we get everyone on the phone and we try to show that there was a miscommunication on purpose. And it seems as though what you communicated really wasn't the will of your seller or your buyer. And then the other broker, just to let you know, just like I would to defend you guys, will say, where was that in writing with the parties? Oh, it wasn't. No agreements between the agents are binding. And then if you were like, oh yeah, they are, I'll take you to court. No, you won't. You'll never get there. And it was never between us anyways. So we have to like keep that moving forward. And I've been seeing more and more timeline issues than I've ever seen before. Because the market has shifted and everyone's trying, like, let's just get it through. No, let's hit our timelines and paperwork matters. Now, the last change on this form for you to highlight is under that buyer election on section 2. Buyer accepts seller's response to buyer's notice and agrees to close of escrow without correction of the items seller has not agreed in writing or correct or address. So again, it's that or address. But you should highlight that whole thing because it's very important. Because if they respond with anything other than what you asked for in the seller's response, whatever they didn't address, they're not going to fix. Now, if the buyer decides not to respond to the seller's response, we don't respond. What happens? What is it deemed? Yeah, of whatever the seller responded with. I'm just not going to respond to them. Well, you don't have to respond to them, but then in Q, we are handshaking them. So we might as well respond to them. When you represent the buyer, even if they agreed to the addendum, I need this section signed. More so for you. Here's the thing. How long does someone have to come after us saying we didn't represent them properly?
6 years.
6 years. Right. Unless it's fraud, which is really hard to prove. There's 7 elements, and I think it's like nearly impossible they made it. But 6 years. So in 5 years, in 3 months, someone looks at it. You know who I should go after? Michael. Well, there's 2 Michaels at this table, so I'm going to totally choose Mike and Michael. They really messed me up. They didn't even give me my last option, and I can prove it because I never signed this, and I can't believe I never signed this. They didn't give me their last option. And you know what you did 5.5 years ago? You texted with your client, because you know what your client likes to do? They like to text. And so that's a great form of communication. We should never text somebody. By the way, I followed up with you in writing in your email. So if you could please respond to the email, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much. That would just be unheard of. Not that Mike and Michael would do that, but like, let's just say you didn't, and everything was in text, and it's 5.5 years later, I don't have this signed, and they're saying they were never given an option to cancel the contract because they didn't want to move forward. How are you going to prove otherwise? You're not. You know who's in trouble? Me and you, and me going, stop texting humans only. So I need you to always have this completed. And it's not, one more thing, and I don't want to stress them. No, you like your license. I need this form done perfect. And that's really what it comes down to, because my job is to take care of you. Like your job is to take care of your client. In turn, my job is to take care of your client, but I have to do it through you. So to do that properly, I need this section always filled out unless they mark the top box on seller's response, which is seller agrees to correct or address the items disapproved. But anything other than agrees or anything written here, I need you to have that buyer's election done. Does that make sense? Cool. And you know what? Here's the cool thing about real estate. It's not scary. It's how you present it to the client.
Mm.
Now, some clients are a little off, like they're just mad at the world. Sometimes you just take an hour and you go back. Like I get that. They're called humans. But it's all about your presentation. Okay, just to formalize it, just want to make sure you understood your options. Great, let's sign here. Cool, we're moving forward. I'll send you an email later just to follow up and text you when I send that over. Do we all have clients who don't check their email until you text them to check their email? I was going through my husband's email this weekend. Oh my gosh, 638 emails. Found out that I can pick up my cat's ashes, by the way. I was like, it'd be so
5
great,
years ago.
babe, if you could check this once in a while. Well, I figured, since the job texts me that I don't need to check this too. And I'm like, "Ugh, well, they have their own thing going, but I'm telling you as your wife, you will start checking your email, or I will be reading it nightly now because this is unacceptable." So I always say, if you have someone like him, which I'm so sorry, for our profession, his profession, he's great, right? Is you would text somebody like him and say, hey, can you check your email and please hit reply? Because that's what's so incredibly important to make sure that we always have everything fully thought out. Everyone good on that one? Cool.
Can I ask you real quick?
Yeah.
Your language, when you said anything other than seller agrees, check mark at the top. Can you finish that statement?
Anything other than that one that sellers agrees, you must finish the buyer's election below.
Oh,
Premise
okay, yeah.
accepted.
Yeah. So very important. And now we're going to go to the purchase contract. Now, what's really cool is in that README email that came out Saturday. I think I emailed it finally on time, Saturday. Had a couple off weeks. Thank you guys for your grace. The one that came out the week before, I did put the red line, just like Lucinda mentioned today, the red line links there and the risk management FAQs. So that way you can read it for yourself as well, because this is the one thing, if we don't have it memorized, we're going to have some issues. And not memorized in the fact of like, I don't need you to say Mandy line number 5, blah, blah, blah. Just the concepts of the chunks, right? That's what it is, the concepts of the chunks. So the very first change that we care about, just to let you know, is all the way on section 5, which is page 5 in 5A. In here, it's the second to last line. It says, engage in negotiations or address repairs, improvements to the contract. It's the or address that is so important. This is the section of the contract I just want to point out that most realtors skip. When you're in section 5, most agents, they're like, yep, nothing to fill out here. And they just keep moving forward. This is one of the most important sections of the contract. This section 5A says, hey, you understand this property is being sold as is in its present physical condition. And so you understand that you need to inspect it as the buyer, and the seller is warranting the fact that they're going to remove all the personal items and debris from the property by close of escrow. So this section is so extremely important in our dealings, yet most agents forget that it exists. Most agents still think it's acceptable to write as is in additional terms. None of our agents, so our agents are the best agents. As is means nothing because it states that on line 191 and 192. But now it also says in here, buyers advised to conduct independent inspections and investigations regarding the premises within the inspection period specified in 6A. Buyer and seller acknowledge and understand they may, but are not obligated to, this is the key here, engage in negotiations or address repairs, improvements to the premises. that's one of the coolest things of this contract is that, yeah, it's as is, but you still have the right to ask for repairs. And in our case now, address repairs, address improvements, right? We have the right to still talk about them. So if a seller ever says to you, I'll sell my property, but I want to sell it as is, do you mean you want to make no repairs? Because the biggest risk we can do is take away the buyer's ability to have the inspection. We want the buyer to have the inspection, but why not let's just have them say, I want to buy the property or I want to cancel. That's why for a long time in the past 2 years, the one thing I was teaching over and over was counter back in their inspection process, but say buyer agrees to ask for no repairs. So therefore, either you move forward or you cancel. Because do we want someone that finds something they can't live with really buying the property? No, because that equals a lawsuit, and that really does get to court because you harmed a party. But we absolutely are okay countering out the fact that they can no longer ask for repairs, but now you're moving forward on your own accord or you're canceling, right? So those are really important to understand there. So if anything, if you guys can circle this box and remind yourself to go back and read it 10 times over, this is the one area of your contract that you can go back to 10 times. Even including at pre-closing walkthrough when somebody's personal items is all over the property and they have garbage all the way stacked to the roof. None of you have ever seen that, right? This is why I supported Jake buying a truck. I was like, and Jake, you're gonna go pick up the garbage that they left. Bad. This is where we would be using that brief walkthrough form on section 2 and curing someone saying you have the responsibility to remove all of the personal property and debris per section 5A of the contract, which is 195 to 196. Okay, and then define broom swept. Exactly. My grandma was a witch too. And and I'm gonna say her broom swept is totally different than my broom swept. Yeah, right? Did it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, it's a good month to use that verbiage and expect nothing. They finally defined it. Just remove your stuff. Remove your stuff. So if you leave some dirt behind, a life is okay, but don't leave the garbage that smells bad. Usually if you run into a situation, by the way, where there's a lot of garbage and bulk pickups the next week, you know, it's called getting the buyer and the seller on the same page. Hey, the seller wants to know, are you okay with leaving the stuff on the front curb? They're picking up on Tuesday. You know, sending a little website link that says bulk pickup is Tuesday. If you want to confirm, call the city yourself, you know, things like that. All right. So our next section that really changed, and I'm going backwards, is on page 6. We're going to go all the way down to lines 274. What I would like you to know is in section 6J, it starts with the fact that this is how the buyer disapproves. And what I want you to know, it says specifies disapproval of items in the first part of 6J, starting on 264 to 272. Therefore, I do not want you removing what you already do, which is to specifically state your reasons. The items that are disapproved. AC unit, lucky to be alive today. Half of it froze up while we were at the home inspection. Saw the leaking Freon, never saw that before. That was pretty amazing. I think that's R22. Now we need 410. So how much is that new unit going to be? 10 grand easy, right? So these are things like, so why not specify, replace AC unit with a 410 unit due to end of life, you know, and then you know, or
But are you actually?
give me 10
able
grand.
to say that if it's still working?
Yeah, you can say replace. They don't have to
Still
agree
working?
to it. Yeah, well, it's freezing and it's half working.
Okay.
But let's, per the government, right, whoever the powers that be, is it the EPA that controls this stuff? I really don't know. I guess I should know. Is it?
I think so, yeah.
Cool, we sound smart. Just keep moving forward. Environmental Protection Agency.
Oh.
You can know, most companies will no longer work on R22 machines in the case that they do need to be replaced, because by the time they replace the condenser and all of that, most of them are saying that the materials and they stop creating that Freon. So, it's obsolete and it's been outlawed for the most
So
part.
even though it's working,
You could say replace.
okay,
Because they don't have to agree to it, right? That's the kicker.
Yeah,
I think, isn't it say, it's whatever item is not working to manufacturer specifications, if it's not to
Well,
what they're.
but define that, because if you
Well,
got
I mean,
an
it's
AC,
not-
you know, an HVAC, you know, person to come out and inspect it and say that's working fine, it's older, but it's working fine, there's no issues. It's older, but it's working.
Yeah, but she's not said, she didn't say that, she said that the freon was freezing. out.
Without freezing, The
Yeah,
unit is
but
freezing
you're-
up and
Okay,
looking
so if
freezing
there are
up,
issues,
yeah.
yeah, then.
But if we go back, and I like that we're talking about this on line 198, it says, and negotiate or address repairs / improvements. So is a replacement an improvement then?
Well, yeah, yes, it is, yeah, if you're, going from the old technology to what's currently.
I mean, I always put repair or replace, you know.
Yeah, and it always depends on what the client wants, right?
Mhm.
Now, in our 22 unit, we have been educated as an industry for years now that they will no longer work on those we're gonna just go with the EPA, but I'm not sure.
I'm not positive either.
Yeah, but I just feel like that's the air we breathe, right? And so I'm just saying, like, knowing that and walking into it, but again, my buyers are led down the path of, do you love this home and what would make you not buy this home, and only choose 3 to 5 major items that you can't live without being repaired, or the seller will mentally shut down and you'll not get this home with the repairs you want. And even though then by the time we get to the buyer's inspection notice, I'm like, and what would you like repaired? They go, well, you said to only choose 3 to 5 items. And then I say something like, yeah, absolutely, but you can ask for whatever you want. Well, Mandy, you said 3 to 5 items. And I'm like, oh, did that work? Did those leading statements work? And then if the AC is my one big item, right, then we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna address it, right,
So
and
many
negotiate it.
times I've been, dealing with, let's say, open houses, and the first thing, well, these AC units are really, really old. I see they are, but, I try to, whatever the owner, the listing agent told me, or in one case, the owner who was actually at the house told me that I just had these serviced, they work fantastic, they are older, but they work great, there's no issues. So I just passed that information along.
What you want to do next time, which I like the concept, right? And I really felt like the one I'm replacing this week was gonna work forever, because it's already like since 1983. I'm like, it's just on this last, it's amazing, it's still working. I love that, it's big box, I even learned how to flip the little switch at the bottom. Now it's gonna be something I don't know how to work.
Yeah.
But can you get me the copy of the invoice that says that? And then just say, hey, by the way, I have the seller property disclosure statement right here, and this is the invoice from the last AC company, if you want to look over that. And have that information right there for them to address.
It was just enough.
No, I'm just saying, like, that way nobody in hearsay world of
Okay.
consumer says, well, he said, Dave said it was working great and they're like, oh, that's what I told Dave. And it's like, yeah, that's what you told Dave. But, and then just remember, as a professional, we can only prove what's in writing. What the public can prove is anything we communicate. So I'd always say to the listing agent, if they bring anything like that up, do you have the last invoices or the property disclosure statement I could put out? So that way, if someone brings it up, I can just address them to it.
I like that.
And then the other thing you could say that wouldn't get you in trouble is, I've been in this 120-degree environment all day outside, and it's been 77 all day inside. It's been nice. But I'm not saying anything further than that. That's all I can do. But I like where you're going with it. Is smile and nod and say, isn't it true that they used to build things so nice in the 80s? Thanks for asking. Yeah. And those black John F. Long homes in Maryville, think about it. How good is that construction? They're still standing, number one. And people have gutted and re-gutted and gutted, and they still stay standing because it's like the perfect house to redo a floor plan in. Amazing, 1970 something. All right, 274, they added the word that provide the seller an opportunity to correct or address. Again, 274, they're allowing the seller to address what needs to be repaired instead of just saying correct, which used to be an invalid response. Which used to be you can't just put that there. So now they can really just respond with that price reduction you asked for or the monies you asked for. So 274, you want to highlight or address. 277, you're going to highlight on the last line or address. It used to be we would just ask to correct the items. Now they're saying that we deem seller's refusal to correct or address any of the items. Then line 281 on the top, they added or address. If seller is unwilling to correct or address the items disapproved, the buyer may cancel within 5 days. Remember that. 284 at the very end, they added or address. You might think that this is crazy to make you highlight all these spots. I'm trying to tell you the only way to remember all the changes and that addressing is such a open term is such an ambiguous open term.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I need you to know it's no longer just correcting or replacing, right?
284 and where else?
Yep, that's all. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 highlights. You have 4 highlights, Justin, 274,
I've got 274.
277.
Address right there, okay.
277.
Seller address, down on 277.
281.
Oh, or address, okay. I got- all right.
284.
Yeah, and then I got 284, yeah.
So this is just like a really important part. Okay, and I believe those are the changes to our contracts. So best practices were or are, if you represent the buyer, always specify the items no matter what. Say or, do the sales price, the concession, use an addendum. And in that addendum, never say in lieu of repairs. The addendum should just say seller to contribute $5,000 towards any costs incurred by the buyer for this transaction. However, if you already asked for money in the contract, an additional $5,000 or the total of them combined. Because we never want addendum 1 to replace what we already have in the contract. So if we already asked for 15 here, 15,000, we're getting 3% back to buy down our rate or whatever we're gonna use it for. We're getting 3% back in the contract. And now we're going in asking for another $5,000 and they agree to it. It's either the addendum's a total of $20,000 or an additional $5,000. But if you just say seller to contribute $5,000, you just replaced what was in the contract. So be very careful with that verbiage, an additional or a total of.
Remember how we would find out, from the lender what the total amount is that they're willing to credit, and then we would split that? We didn't talk about that, did we?
We did a little bit, but I like that. Yeah, you'd split that between the sales price and the concessions.
Yeah, because on my I've got this huge, first I have this huge list, and there's a lot of stuff going on, foundation, roof, and then the seller to credit buyer 5280 towards any cost incurred by buyer for this transaction, see addendum 1, and seller agrees to pay $692.52 towards buyer's contractors at close of escrow. That's for the roof. Buyer will supply invoices for the seller to pay through the settlement statement. Beautifully worded.
So good, Dave.
Miss Man.
No, we're gonna give you all the credit. I'm just here to make you look good. And then we need to see if they agree to it or not agree to it. But did you see how we didn't do the monies to the contractor on the
Yeah.
addendum?
Yeah.
Because that was an agreement between the buyer and the seller, and the buyer was to supply the invoice to the seller, and the seller paid it out of their proceeds at closing. Again, taking that risk of they might not be there tomorrow.
And this was during the frenzy, and they went for it. They
What-
did it. They did the roof, they did all that.
They knew their house had issues and they just wanted out.
That's it.
And right now, even houses without issues are like, what can I give you to sell us? You know, so we really got to think about when you represent a buyer, what you're doing, and just make sure. I want you to know that the first buyer's inspection notice revision that came out specifically had lines on page 1 of it that said concessions and sales price. And all of us, managing brokers who really feel like good faith matters, right? Especially during the frenzy, which was so hard, pushed back 110%, said absolutely not. Because right in front of the buyer's face, you're saying negotiate the terms of the contract. And a lot of people during the frenzy, what they did is they bid it up to try to negotiate it down in the buyer's inspection notice. And that's not why you should have been bidding it up. You don't bid it up to win to try to renegotiate because you had no intent to ever move forward, right? So we were all like, no. And so this is the way they opened it up so we would stop invalidating our requests. Is adding those terms or address. But if you notice, they do it on the seller side. They don't do it on the buyer side. So buyers, I still need you to specify the items disapproved. And then put the fix. And if an addendum's necessary, add that addendum and send it over, right?
Nothing has really changed the way that I wrote this then.
Right. That's exactly it, Dave.
Okay.
You're gonna use that moving forward on
Okay.
all, and best practice is always to say what you disapprove of.
Right.
Cause I think that could still be argued. But the seller now can finally give you a response about monies and addendas without us saying that's an invalid response, or that wasn't added. We definitely need it this way. And that's nice, but just always make sure that we're saying addendum 1, addendum 2, and addendum 1 or 2 are mentioned on our Binzer, but they're not mentioned on the addendum. Okay, it's not, the addendum's just very straightforward. And if you need help with verbiage, if you just call me and let me know, if you have any of these situations and you just call me and let me know, I'll help you. So don't think you're on your own on that one. That one's hard. And if it is Saturday at 8 o'clock at night and I'm kind of seeing double, I don't know why 8 o'clock just sneaks up and says, go to bed. It's so sad anymore. I'm like, remember 1 a.m.? Yeah. I know, it's so sad. You can text it to me and I can check it sometimes faster than having barking dogs and crying kids. I know they're teens, but I tell you, they cry more than they used to. Like, what is happening? All I did was say no. You should just move on. Just move on. So anybody have any questions? Everybody doing okay? Yes, Scott.
So are these already in special?
Yes.
The new one?
Yes. They came out October 1st. So they came out 9 days ago, but you're gonna see both contracts in there and both buyer's inspection notices in there. Please only use the October 2022 moving forward. If you have a current escrow that has the older contract on it, follow through with the other forms. But as of November 1st, there's no reason to ever use something prior to October 1st.
So the Sullivan will be in there too?
Yeah, for a little while. Which, so just watch your dates, October 2022. Just go, when did Hocus Pocus 2 come out? Come on, I know it's on all your Facebook feeds. Justin, you okay? Oh, okay. Alrighty, if we're happy and we know it, I'm gonna hit stop share. Yes. Update. Oh, yes, please update your any templates on transaction desk or on SkySlope forms.